Hello and welcome back to the video series Resource File Building with me, your host, Andy Woolley. In this section we're going to look at the Excel sheet that you've downloaded, which as you can see on screen is broken down into several worksheet tabs. It is color coded appropriately, so we have a roadmap in order to visualize which parts are relevant to those four key areas: the planning, the research, the implementation and the review. Before we get started in it, I'll give you a little bit of background on this and really what we're trying to achieve from it that makes sense of why we're bothering. So the first page is basically your details, and I use this typically with lots of clients to ensure that we have continuity of who's the hoster, what the passwords are, server access, FTP access, social media URLs. So I use this as a bedrock in order to go back into clients, access things, more so when sometimes we might be migrating the website, we might be changing hosting package, in order to make sure that we have a point of reference for that changing detail. Purely up to you how you fill this through, but I've always found it extremely useful when I'm managing multiple clients. The other thing then is when you're moving forward and you're doing any sort of social media, then having the reference to the URL and which social media is in play is again another attribute that is embedded within this first page. Secondly then is all the contact details, absolutely vital because there may be many people or many stakeholders involved in this particular conversation. From the client who naturally engaged you, or you may be the client and therefore you wear all the hats, but then having your contacts out maybe to content writers if you're not doing it yourself, maybe contacts out to your host provider so you know who you've dealt with, or even to part of your team so you know who's doing different elements of that particular process. All of this just helps to consolidate it on the home page. Now, this is by no means a defined process. And what I mean by that is everything is dynamic. In marketing, everything is dynamic, which means it's subject to change, tweaking, improving, editing, making sure it's fit for purpose for your needs. This is simply a benchmark by which you can use it in order to roll out what, from a starting position, what you think, well, I need a little bit more for the social media. I definitely need more contacts to go in there. There's no harm. This is an editable document. It's not restricted in any way. Please do tweak and change it appropriate to the way you need it. So as we move through the work tabs, and you can do it one of two ways. You can either go by the menu that is on the right-hand side. All those are clickable links within the document. And each time you do click through to, say, one of the pages, like this on the second page, the known keywords, up in the top right-hand corner, I've also put a home button, as you can see there. So as soon as that is clicked, it will always take you back to the main menu. So it doesn't matter how many tabs there are on the bottom. And we're starting with 15, which is kind of where I start as a blank template for all my clients. But naturally, depending on what makes them slightly different and what their goals are, you might actually tweak and change and add more work tabs. So it just makes it a little bit easier to move forwards and backwards through what can be quite a big document. More so if your purpose is to do, say, just local SEO as opposed to international SEO, and therefore you're looking at the various caveats for each one respectively. So if I just take a moment and we run through it briefly, each one of these I have given them some overview within the green shaded boxes, just to give you a mind's eye of what the purpose of each of these work tabs is about. You can certainly delete them, but likewise you can just click them and move them out the way if you so wish. And that way then they don't get in the way of what that document is about. I've already set the tabs up for the way that I would use the document, and I've also, from a scrolling point of view, fixed the first set of rows in order to keep that knowledge of what the title tags are about relevant as well. I've also added into another stage, I've added in the filters so that once we start running through the implementation and then we start looking at how we're going to use some of those keywords, we will return through this video series and we will look at ways in which we will group and filter keywords, and we will do some conditional formatting in order to find the nuggets within a large list. So basically, if you consider we're looking for the needle in the haystack approach, but ideally, this document, and I do it with several clients, this document could be looking for one needle in many haystacks. And that's the power of Excel, being able to group and filter and use conditional formatting to find the things that really connect with your target audience. There are many ways of doing it. This, I find, is a very formatic and tried and trusted way of doing it. So obviously we'll look for organic terms, and again, same process. I've given you an overview basically that ties in with the ebook and a starting position. This is no means defined. We can keep exponentially increasing these titles to the right hand side in order to keep bringing more and more evidence in that we can sift through. But as we work through this video series, we are not just building an unwieldy beast that we cannot manage. We need to bring an element of automation into it to speed the process up and find the information quickly. This is kind of what I do for a living, for clients, to ensure that when I've consolidated all this data, which normally takes a couple of days to do it methodically, then within an hour's phone call, they fully see the picture, they see the discovery, they know the working value of this document, and it affords them the insight, whether they choose to use it themselves for their team or I continue on a retainer basis, to delve in and keep pulling out vital information that's only going to build their entities on their particular websites. So the next one is obviously we look for paid terms as well, as opposed to the organic terms. We also have PAA, which stands for People Also Ask, another new feature introduced by Google, which is the most popular questions being asked within a certain topic, and therefore it pays to keep leaning towards some of the most obvious things that build your silos and reinforce your content clusters. But we'll talk about this more later on in the series, not to confuse you now. Just going a basic overview for now. We'll also look at content ideas, and we'll use such tools as like Answer the Public for this, which will afford you the luxury of tying your keywords and phrases together within content, and then obviously either writing the content out yourself or pushing it out to your content writers in order to develop relevant content, not just content for the sake of it, that will draw a relevant audience that's engaging in this moment. And therefore you can convert from it. We'll also do a little bit of gap analysis. For those who don't know what a gap analysis is, very similar to a Venn diagram where you have two circles overlapping each other, and you can see keywords and phrases that you may share with a competitor, but likewise keywords and phrases you may not have on yours, but they have and they're ranking for, relevant to what your offering is. And therefore, this is how we can steal some of those keywords and build out and connect to a fresh audience, will bring more people into your brand. So gap analysis is a great way of doing that. That's kind of built on traditional marketing principles. We'll also then keep a record of our competitors, both of our direct and indirect competitors. So direct are the ones that you know about. Indirect are people within your market stealing your customers, but you may not be aware of it. So I'll give you an example, is that you may do Airbnb property management, but an estate agent is doing that as a side hustle. And basically then part of their website is advertising Airbnb property as well. And therefore they're touting for the very same customers you're after. They're very much what we would consider in a traditional marketing term, a silent seller. So therefore we will look at our competitors, catalogue them, and it's always good to see the ones that you knew were competitors and also discover new ones that you didn't realise were competitors. Once we do that, then we will analyse that. We will use a premium tool such as SEMrush. We will also run through and do it through the likes of Ubersuggest as well, for those of you who don't have a premium tool. You can set it up as a free 7-day version, but it is advisable that if you're going to take this seriously and really want to make a difference on your bottom line, it's worth paying for a tool. Be that SEMrush, Moz, Ahrefs, there's lots of them out there. But for me, I favour SEMrush. I've always used it for the last couple, probably 5-6 years. I found it very intuitive, so I'll be using that through the series. But I will give you free alternatives as well, not to disadvantage you. From that, we will also look at backlinks. And whilst we're not really talking about that from a keywords perspective in the sense of this series. We will, in time between it and myself, we will reach out and do a complete series that'll tie in with our next ebook on backlinks. But for now, what we'll be looking for is the frequency of how a keyword or phrase is referenced, and therefore we can go and find relevant backlinks to that, or third-party sites that reinforce it and pass that link love in order to boost us on the internet. That is a very similar approach with the next one, which is your anchor text, which is obviously to give you an analogy, if you go on Wikipedia and you see all those blue hyperlinks within the document, that is anchor text. There are many different forms of anchor text, but we will look at how they've been chosen predominantly on your competitors' websites, and in doing so, we can see how these can be built out and embedded within your own content to drive more traffic. The next one then is referring domains. So again, looking at our competitors, we're going to see which other domains are talking about them and ranking them and passing value to them, which is kind of what backlinks are all about. And in doing so, there might be an opportunity here, and this is part of your goals, an opportunity with your content writers to reach out to them and develop a relationship and acquire the power of that backlink, that link love, so that it reinforces your website. So if you have YouTube and social media and websites, and then you have a newspaper piece, a PR piece, and they talk about you like the Daily Mail, well, we know the Daily Mail, we know YouTube, those as third-party sites reinforce and talk back to your landing pages, and that value ups the value of your landing page. So that's something we will talk about later on in a new series on backlinks, but referencing those referring domains is due diligence within this document, and something I always do from the get-go, because it becomes the next part of the conversation after we've started embedding keywords and phrases. The last part then is I normally do a page structure for the website. Now, this is obviously subject to the size of the website, but if we run Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your traffic is coming on 20% of your most prominent pages and the rest is the filler, then you realize even if we took the tip of the spear, the most popular pages, and we itemize them within this part of the document as our page structure, we would see where we want the heavy hitting keywords and phrases to reside, and therefore develop our main silos and reinforce it with our content structures thereunder. And obviously down the road, we'd reinforce that with contextual linking and backlinks as well. So in here, we start building out a visual guide for us that will tell us how that page needs to sing the right tune and be recognized for the right keywords that we wish it to be for. So the search engines, predominantly Google, pick that up and then in turn rank us for it. And then the last one is the SERPs. Sorry, not the last, almost last, there's recommendations after this, but almost the last one then is SERPs. So now in this one, this is part of the implementation part, which stands for Search Engine Results Page. I keep a log of my posts, my pages, my categories, and I like to keep a visual record, a roadmap as it were, of how I've included the keywords in there, how I've written the meta descriptions, the title tags, even the H1 tags. And that way then I have a fair idea of which pages are pulling in the most power. So again, it's another way of doing it. Not everybody does this, but I find that for one or two of the clients I work with, this methodical approach affords me the luxury then of coming into Excel and seeing that I don't cannibalize my keywords, right? That's quite an important term. What it means is I use the same keyword on two pages and therefore decrease its value. Because when the search engines come to rank or crawl that page and then look to rank it, they're going to say, yeah, but you want to rank for it here and you want to rank for it there. Now, organically, that can happen. But we'd rather, through SEO, and that's the whole point here, is direct that conversation so we get the right pages ranking for the right keywords, and then we win the secondary keywords automatically. So I keep a visual clue of this by doing a SERP file. And then the very last one then is the recommendations, which builds back into the review. Here we keep a score of our top 10 keywords, and by no means this is an exact science, and I'll tell you for why. is if you are the likes of Amazon or eBay, you rank for millions of keywords. So just to choose 10 would be an impossible task because you spread across many categories. But if we dumb that all the way down, we're looking from a standing point of view, a beginner's point of view. We probably don't even rank for 10 keywords as it stands at the moment. So being very specific of how we get the right keywords and then eventually building up to our desired 10 or desired 5 or desired 8 or desired 50 makes no difference. This is simply a visual clue that we're going in the right direction. Because if you do build a beast in time and then 3-4 years down the road, you start ranking for thousands of keywords and phrases, the likelihood that what we're trying to achieve ultimately is what we call keyword dispersion, where we want more traffic spread over more keywords because that brings in more audience. Plus, there's more safety when the search engines decide then to have an algorithm update and they want to change things, and then some will go down and some will go up. There's more surety if you have diversity. And that's a simple principle in life that's honed by digital marketing, is you don't put all your eggs in one basket, you make sure they're spread comfortably across. If you've got one website and it specifically only ranks for a handful of keywords, but that brings all its traffic in, if that gets hit with an algorithm update, you can massively lose your traffic. 50-60% of your traffic could be gone overnight and may slowly come back, but if it's a monetary site, that would financially impact you quite hard. So we look to start building out our lists, valuing the ones that we never want to lose, because again, it's like everything, it's dynamic. Google is going to reward you if you put the effort in, but it's not going to continue rewarding you if you don't continue putting the effort in. So we always need to keep our eye on our chosen keywords that really define who we are. If you consider an elevator pitch, how best to describe your business, and you describe it within 30 seconds, and this is something we'll hark back to in the planning, then you know already, holistically, you've said some of the keywords, the main keywords that represent your brand. And those are the ones we've got to keep an eye on and nurture and retain to ensure that we know who we are. And then obviously we can build them off into secondary and tertiary keywords as well because they're supporting. An example is I'd love to rank for insurance because the sheer volume of traffic that will come off that. But then my secondary and tertiary keywords could be pet insurance or pet insurance renewal quotes. All of those carry substantial traffic to them. But as primary, secondary and tertiary keywords and further on down there, they get less value because they become more niche. This is something we talk about in the ebook, is understanding your seed or head keyword, your body keyword, and then your long tail keyword. So the more words in there that become a phrase, your keywords become a keyword phrase. Yes, you can still rank, but ultimately it will be diminished in how many people searching for it because they're all being more specific, whereas the word insurance could be brought into a search query in many different ways. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the Excel sheet. Join me in the next video and we'll start filling this out from a planning perspective. See you in the next video.